Please, sir, just a little something to eat.
The girl begging on his street was not a beggar. He knew it the moment he saw her, not from her torn clothes, but from the way she watched everyone, with eyes that saw too much. Kene was a simple man. He worked hard as a carpenter, but Lagos was a city that swallowed hard work and asked for more. His small, one-room apartment was in a compound owned by a rich old man nobody ever saw. The compound had 4 tenants. There was Mama Caro, a loud woman who sold provisions from her front door and believed everyone else's business was her own. There was a young banker named Emeka who polished his shoes every morning and looked down on everyone. Then there was Kene. The 4th apartment had been empty for months. Life was a straight line for Kene. Wake up, pray, go to his workshop, fight with traffic, come home, sleep. Every kobo he made was carefully planned. Rent, food, a little to send to his mother in the village. There was no room for surprises. The girl was a surprise. She appeared one Monday morning at the corner of their street, sitting on a small mat. She was young, maybe 20 years old. Her dress was faded and had a tear near the shoulder. Her feet were dusty. She did not shout or run after cars like the other beggars. She just sat there, quiet and still, holding out a small plastic bowl. But it was her eyes that held Kene's attention. They were not dull or hopeless. They were sharp, intelligent, and they moved constantly, watching people get off the bus, watching Mama Caro attend to her customers, watching Emeka drive his clean car out of the compound. She was watching everyone, and Kene felt as if she was not just looking, but studying them. The first day he walked past her and only nodded. He had no spare change. Business had been slow. The second day, he felt a pull of guilt. He bought a loaf of bread on his way home and, breaking off a large piece, walked over to her. "Good evening," he said softly. She looked up at him, and for a second, her sharp eyes softened. "Good evening, sir." Her voice was clear, not rough like he expected. He placed the bread in her bowl. "Take this." A small smile touched her lips. "Thank you, sir. God will bless you." He just nodded and walked away, feeling a strange warmth in his chest. But as he entered the compound, he heard Mama Caro's loud voice. "Kene, why are you giving that girl food? Don't you know she is a bad omen? Since she came to this street, my sales have been slow." Kene sighed. "Mama Caro, she is hungry. How can a hungry girl be a bad omen?" "You are too soft, Kene, too soft for this Lagos," she hissed, turning back to a customer. That night, Kene couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the girl's eyes. They were not dull or hopeless. They were sharp, intelligent, and they moved constantly. Watching people get off the bus, watching Mama Caro attend to her customers, watching Emeka drive his clean car out of the compound. She was watching everyone, and Kene felt as if she was not just looking, but studying them. The next few days, Kene made it a point to give her something. Sometimes it was a sachet of pure water. Other times it was a small piece of yam he had saved from his own dinner. He never had money to give, but he shared what he had. Each time she would thank him with that same clear voice and quiet dignity. He learned her name was Adamna. One evening, as he gave her a banana, a sudden rain started. It was a heavy, violent downpour. Everyone ran for cover. Adamna quickly tried to gather her small mat, shivering as the cold rain soaked her thin dress. Kene's heart broke. Without thinking, he called out, "Adamna, come! Come inside the gate. You can stay by the security post until the rain stops." She was hesitant, her eyes darting towards the apartments. "Don't worry. Just stay by the gate. It is better than being soaked in the rain." She quickly ran in, huddling in the small space by the empty security shed, just inside the big black gate. Kene went to his room, feeling good that she was safe from the storm. But his peace was short-lived. A loud banging on his door made him jump. It was Emeka, the banker, his face twisted in anger. Mama Caro stood behind him, her arms crossed. "Kene, what is the meaning of this?" Emeka demanded, pointing a wet finger toward the gate. "Why did you bring that filthy beggar into this compound? Don't you want thieves to come and attack us?" "She is not a thief," Kene said calmly. "She is just a girl trying to stay out of the rain. She is by the gate. She is not coming near our rooms." I don't care, Emeka shouted. I pay my rent in this compound. I do not pay to share it with street beggars. Send her out now. But it is raining heavily, Kene pleaded. Where will she go? That is not our problem, Momokero chimed in. She should go back to wherever she came from. Emeka is right. Send her out, Kenny. Kenny looked from their angry faces towards the gate. He could see Adamna, small and shivering in the corner. He saw the fear in her eyes. They were not watching him now. They were looking at the ground. He felt a surge of anger. No, he said, his voice firm. I will not send a human being out into that storm. She will stay by the gate until the rain stops. She is not harming anyone. Emeka's face turned red. You will regret this, Kene. I will report you to the landlord. I will tell him you are bringing dangerous people into his property. He stormed off to his room, slamming the door. Momokero gave Kene a long, hateful look before going back to her shop. Kene let out a long breath and walked to the gate. He looked at Adamna. I'm sorry about that, he said. She looked up at him, and for the first time, he saw something new in her eyes. It was not gratitude. It was something deeper. Respect. Don't be sorry, she whispered. You are a good man. The rain finally stopped an hour later. Adamna quietly picked up her mat and walked out of the gate, disappearing into the dark, wet street. Kene went back to his room, his heart heavy. He knew Emeka would make good on his threat. He would probably be evicted. He had very little money saved up. Where would he go? He lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if his small act of kindness had just cost him his home. He worried all night. The next morning, as he stepped out of his room, he saw an envelope tacked to his door. His heart pounded in his chest. It was a letter from the landlord. Kene's hands trembled as he stared at the crisp white envelope on his door. His name, Kenechukwu Okoro, was written in neat and elegant handwriting. This was it. Emeka had reported him. The landlord, a man he had never even seen, was going to throw him out onto the streets, just as he had feared. He felt a cold knot of dread tighten in his stomach. For a moment, he considered not opening it, pretending he hadn't seen it, but that would only delay the inevitable. With a deep breath, he pulled the envelope from the door and tore it open. The letter was short and formal. It was not a notice of eviction. It was a summons. He was requested to appear at a house in Ikoyi the next day at 10 a.m. The address was in one of the richest parts of Lagos, a world away from his humble compound. The letter was signed Chief Olabisi Adieme. The landlord had a name. Kenny read the letter 3 times. Why would the landlord want to see him? Not just send a quit notice through his agent, but summon him to Ikoyi. It had to be about the girl, Adamna. Emeka must have painted a terrible picture of him, perhaps accusing him of bringing criminals into the compound. Maybe the landlord wanted to see the troublemaker for himself before kicking him out. The thought filled him with shame. By the time he got home, his body ached with worry. He noticed Adamna was not at her usual spot on the street. He felt a pang of guilt. Had she been scared away by the confrontation, or had something worse happened to her? The street corner looked strangely empty without her quiet presence. That evening, Emeka walked past him with a smug smile. He didn't say a word, but his eyes screamed, "I told you so." Momokero was also unusually quiet, watching him from her shop with a look that was a mix of pity and satisfaction. They both knew about the letter. The caretaker, who only came to collect rent, must have told them. The whole compound was waiting for his downfall. Kene barely slept. He woke up early, washed his best shirt, and ironed it until it was perfectly smooth. He polished his only good pair of shoes. If he was going to be thrown out, he would at least face his landlord with dignity. He took a bus to Ikoyi, the journey feeling like the longest of his life. The bus crawled through the usual Lagos traffic, each minute stretching his anxiety. The address led him to a massive gate, taller than any he had ever seen. A uniformed guard looked him up and down suspiciously. "Yes? Who are you looking for?" the guard asked, his voice rough. I am here to see Chief Olabisi Adieme. I have an appointment," Kene said, his voice shaking slightly as he held out the letter. The guard took the letter, examined it, and then spoke into a small device on his collar. After a moment, the giant gate slid open silently. "He is expecting you. Follow the walkway to the main house." Kene walked down a long path paved with interlocking stones. On either side was a garden, so green and perfect it looked fake. The house at the end was a palace. It was a huge white building with large windows that glittered in the morning sun. He felt like an ant approaching a mountain. A man in a clean white uniform opened the door before he could knock. "Mr. Okoro, please come in. Chief is waiting for you in his study." Kene stepped inside, his jaw dropping. The floor was made of shining marble. The furniture looked like it belonged in a museum. He followed the houseboy through a long hallway, his worn shoes feeling clumsy and loud on the polished floor. The study was a large room lined with books from floor to ceiling. A massive wooden desk sat in the middle, and behind it, in a large leather chair, sat an old man. He had a crown of white hair and a kind, wrinkled face. He wore simple, traditional clothes. This was Chief Olabisi Adeyemi. He did not look like the angry fat man Kene had imagined. He looked calm. "Mr. Kanechukwu Okoro, thank you for coming. Please sit down," the chief said, his voice gentle but firm. He gestured to a chair opposite the desk. Kene sat on the edge of the chair, his back ramrod straight. "Good morning, sir. I have been the owner of the compound you live in for over 30 years, the chief began, his eyes studying Kene's face. "In all those years, I have never summoned a tenant here. Do you know why I have asked you to come?" Kene's heart pounded. "Here it comes. Sir, I think I know. It is because of the girl, the beggar I allowed into the compound during the rain." Chief Onabisi leaned back in his chair, a faint smile on his lips. "Ah, yes, the beggar. Mr. Emeka called my agent. He was very upset. He said you were endangering the other tenants by bringing in street urchins." "Sir, I only wanted to help her. It was raining so hard she was shivering. I told her to stay just by the gate, away from the apartments. I did not mean to cause any trouble," Kene explained, his voice desperate. The chief listened patiently, his fingers steepled together. "Mr. Emeka also told my agent that you are a troublesome tenant, that you are stubborn and do not respect the rules of the compound." Kene's hopes sank. "That is not true, sir. I always pay my rent on time. I do not make trouble. I was only trying to be kind." The last word came out as a whisper. Chief Olabisi was silent for a long moment, his gaze unwavering. Kene felt as if the old man could see right into his soul. He could feel sweat trickling down his back. He was certain the next words from the chief's mouth would be, "You have 1 week to pack your things." Then, the chief did something unexpected. He stood up, walked around the large desk, and stood in front of Kene. "Tell me, Mr. Okoro," he said, his voice softer now, "why did you do it? You knew your co-tenants would be angry. You knew you could get into trouble with me, your landlord. Why risk your home for a stranger?" Kene looked down at his hands, then back up at the chief. He decided to speak the truth from his heart. "Sir, my mother always taught me that you measure a man not by how he treats his equals, but by how he treats those who have nothing. That girl, she had nothing. I only had a little, but I had a roof to offer from the rain. If I had turned her away, I would not have been able to sleep that night. It felt like the right thing to do. A wide, genuine smile spread across the chief's face, transforming his entire demeanor. He looked at Kane with warmth and approval. "For many months, I have been searching," the chief said, his voice filled with a strange emotion. "I am an old man, Kane. I have no son, and my only child, my daughter, is well taken care of. But this property, this business, I built it with my own hands. I cannot leave it to just anyone. I need to leave it to someone with a good heart, someone who understands that wealth is not for oppressing the poor, but for helping them." Kane stared at him, completely confused. What did this have to do with him? The chief continued, "So I devised a test, a simple test, to find an honest and compassionate person." He paused, letting his words sink in. He walked to the door of the study and opened it. "Adana, you can come in now." Kane's head whipped toward the door. Walking into the room was the girl from the street, but she was transformed. The torn, faded dress was gone. She was now wearing an elegant gown. Her hair was beautifully styled, and her feet were in lovely shoes. But it was her face that shocked him the most. She was smiling, and there was no doubt it was her. The same sharp, intelligent eyes. It was Adana. And standing beside her, smiling, was the landlord, Chief Olabisi. Kane's mind spun in confusion. He looked from the chief to the girl and back again. He couldn't understand what was happening. "Kane," the chief said, his voice full of pride, "I would like you to meet my daughter, Adana." Kane felt the world tilt on its axis. The blood drained from his face, and the polished marble floor seemed to sway beneath his feet. He stared at the girl, at Adana. The beggar girl with the sharp eyes was the daughter of this wealthy chief. The woman he had given pieces of bread and a single banana to owned more than he could ever dream of. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. It was a dream. It had to be a trick. Adana stepped forward, her smile gentle. "It is true, Kane. I am his daughter. Forgive me for the deception." Chief Olabisi placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder and guided her to the chair beside Kane's. "Sit, son, before you fall over," he said, his voice kind. Kane sank back into the chair, his mind a whirlwind of confusion. "For 2 years, I have been watching my health fail. I have built a successful property business from nothing, but I have no son to pass it to. My relatives, my nephews, all I see in their eyes is greed. They see my properties, my bank accounts. They do not see the hard work, and they do not see the people who live in my buildings. They would sell everything and chase tenants out for a few extra naira." He sighed, a deep, weary sound. "I told my daughter my fears. I needed to find someone to take over, someone who I could trust. Not a businessman, but a man of character, a man with a heart full of compassion, not naira signs." Adana picked up the story. "It was my idea," she said, looking directly at Kane. Her eyes were just as sharp, but now they held a warmth that made her heart beat faster. She leaned forward slightly. "So for 3 months, I have been on that street corner. I chose your compound because it was one of my father's first properties. I watched everyone.
I saw Mama Caro, who goes to church every Sunday, but insults customers who owe her 50 naira. I saw her look at me with disgust. I saw a Mecca who drives a fancy car, but would rather splash muddy water on me than slow down. He saw me as less than human. Her gaze softened as she looked at Kane. And then I saw you. You never had much. On the days you gave me something, I knew you were taking from your own dinner. You didn't give me money to show off. You shared your food. You spoke to me with respect. You called me by my name. You saw a person, not a beggar. And the night of the rain, Chief Olabisi said, his voice thick with emotion, my daughter called me from a hidden phone. She told me what was happening. She told me how Emeka and Mama Caro wanted to throw her out into the storm. And she told me how you, a man who could lose his home, stood up for her. You risked everything for a stranger. That was the final test, Kane, and you passed with a score higher than I could have imagined. Kane was speechless. He could only stare at them, his mind slowly piecing everything together. The quiet girl, the sudden summons, the strange questions. It was all a plan, a search, and somehow he was the one they had found. Sir, I don't know what to say, he stammered. I am just a carpenter. You are more than that, the chief said firmly. You are the man I have been searching for. Kane, I want to offer you a proposition. I want you to work for me, for us.
I want to teach you everything about this business. I want you to be the manager of all my properties. Kane's eyes widened in shock. Manager? Sir, I don't know how to read contracts or manage accounts. I only know how to work with wood. You can learn business, Adonma said softly, but no school can teach you the kindness that is already in your heart. That is what matters most. We will teach you the rest. Chief Olabisi stood and walked to his desk. He picked up a thick file and a set of keys. He placed them on the desk in front of Kane. This file contains the details of the 4 compounds I own in your area. And these, he said, pushing the keys forward, are the master keys. Your first job is to manage the compound you live in. You will no longer pay rent. Instead, you will collect it. You will handle the repairs. You will be in charge. Kane looked at the keys, then at the chief. This was too much. It was a life he could not even imagine. There is one more thing, the chief said, his eyes twinkling. Mr. Emeka. He called my agent again this morning, demanding that you be evicted immediately, and Mama Caro supported him. As the new manager, what they did is now your problem to solve. You have the authority to ask them to leave. What will you do? Kane's mind went back to their angry, hateful faces. He remembered the smug smile on Emeka's face. He had the power now to make them feel the same fear he had felt. He could throw them out. He picked up the keys, the cold metal feeling heavy and real in his hand. He thought for a long moment. He finally looked up, his voice clear and steady. Sir, if I ask them to leave, I will be acting like them. I will be using my power to punish. I will not do that. The chief raised an eyebrow. So, you will let them stay? After how they treated you? After how they treated my daughter? I will call a tenants meeting. I will introduce myself as the new manager. I will tell them that the first rule of the compound, from now on, is that we must treat everyone,
inside and outside our gate, with respect and kindness. I will give them a warning, a second chance. That is what a good man would do. A slow, proud smile spread across Chief Olabisi's face. He looked at his daughter, who was beaming at Kene with tears in her eyes. The chief knew in that moment that he had made the right choice. He had not just found a manager for his property, he had found a son. "Excellent," the chief said, his voice booming with satisfaction. "Your first decision is a wise one. Go, Mr. Manager. Your work has just begun." Kene stood up, his legs feeling stronger now. He clutched the file and the keys. He bowed deeply to the chief, then turned to Adanma and gave a respectful nod. As he walked out of the magnificent study, through the long hallway and out the giant front door into the bright Lego sun, he felt like a different man. The world had not tilted back. It had settled into a new position, a new reality. He was no longer just Kene, the poor carpenter. He was Kenechukwu Okoro, the man who had been chosen not for his wealth or his education, but for the simple kindness he had shown to a beggar girl in the rain.